Right, my darlings? Well, the public has spoken, and unsurprisingly, the one they wanted me to go back to was the series of reviews that not only made my channel what it is now, but also helped spawn my mascot. So, we're going back to the world of the animals of Farthing Wood.
And we're going back to my roots too.
Excuse me?
You'll see soon enough.
Well, okay then. Now, of course, I've done reviews on this show countless times in the past, but this is an anniversary video, and I haven't talked about this show in a long time, and there may be some new people here. So let's go into the history either way. The Animals of Farthing Wood started off as a book series written by British author Colin Dann, with the very first entry being released in 1979, with a total of 8 books being made, with the final being released in 1994, ironically a year before the TV show ended.
Kinda reminds you of Game of Thrones, doesn't it?
And that's not the only thing it has in common with that show either. When it was released, it obviously got a lot of comparisons to Richard Adams' Watership Down, in how they were both series about woodland animals trying to survive in nature and against mankind to find new homes for themselves. And while there are definitely similarities, I don't think the comparison is all that fair. Watership Down was sort of meant to be about the world itself rather than the characters, creating a very rich lore, to the point where it practically invented its own language within the books. And it was definitely meant to be an allegory towards other things such as the Holocaust. Animals of Farthing Wood, however, focuses more on the characters and definitely makes it clear that these are animals, not meant to be allegories for humans, even though they do sometimes do human-like things. Of course, the biggest comparison is in how dark these shows can be for what's supposed to be children's entertainment. The Animals of Farthing Wood may not have Watership Down beat in terms of its tone, but it definitely trumps it in the amount of deaths that it has. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. In 1993, several European-based TV producers and companies decided to come together and make an animated adaptation of the stories that would be broadcast on the BBC. And thus, the Animals of Farthing Wood TV series was born. Bringing together a bunch of classical TV actors and a few unknown ones, the series started off as a modest hit, but gained momentum the longer it went on, and eventually gained a massive fan following. There was some controversy from parents about the violence of the show, which you can see took its toll on the production when we get to Series 3.
Are we looking at that in Series 2 as well?
No. Just Series 1. This video will be long enough as it is without adding those in.
Aww.
But despite being a little scared of it, kids loved the series and it definitely became a career launchpad for many of the people who worked on it. But does it still hold up today? And have my opinions changed on the series at all since I first looked at this nearly 9 years ago?
Was it really that long ago?
Yes. Now do you feel old?
I don't know. I'm not sure what age I'm even supposed to be.
Me neither. But let's get into looking at the very first series of Animals of Farthing Wood. Like last time, I'd like to start off by saying just how incredible the opening sequence is. Unfortunately, I can't show you any of it because whoever owns the rights to this intro really takes the copyright seriously, and showing you even the tiniest bit of it will get my video flagged into oblivion and I won't be able to monetize it, nor will it be able to be viewed in Germany or any of the other Germanic countries of Europe. So I'll leave it at it's a very cool intro with some really good music, so let's move on. The intro to the first episode is more or less the same as what you get in the actual opening, just a little less overdramatic and with less artistic license taken. I mean, I've never seen a cement mixer that big in real life. Well, except where I walked past where they were building the new Trump Tower. And it sets the mood and severity of the situation that they're trying to convey pretty quickly, that the titular Farthing Wood is being torn apart by humans.
The bastards.
Easy now, Huck, you don't even know them.
Oh yes, I did. I was there the day it happened.
Okay, that's the second time you said something like that. Are you trying to imply you're from Farthing Wood?
Yes, I am. What, did you never think about where I came from the day you met me?
Well, no. I mean, the story of how we met could make for a pretty good movie. We might make one. But I never did think about where you actually came from. I guess it's kinda cool, though, that you could actually tell us what all went down that day, from your own perspective as well. Huck? Well, we'll come back to him later. Let's get back to the story. Obviously, this demolition of their home doesn't go unnoticed by the animals of this wood. In particular, Badger, the wise old sentry played by Ron Moody,
chopping away at us every day. Still they're not satisfied.
the snooty know-it-all owl played by Sally Grace,
Half a dozen semi-detached burrows, 3 fully furnished squirrel holes, and at least 15 immaculately kept nests. Oh, 16.
Weasel, the...
Doesn't get any better.
Our last remaining watering hole.
Hard luck on the ducks.
Well, the Weasel, there's really no better descriptor for her than simply her own name. And of course, the main man of the show, Fox, played by Rupert Farley.
Dear, oh dear. Doesn't look too good, does it, old son?
Are you going to tell me that he's your dad now? Looks like he's still not with us yet. Fox decides that this is an emergency, so they need to call an assembly.
Isn't an assembly a bit drastic?
If this isn't drastic,
Exactly.
then what is?
Well, give it 20 years or so and ask Badger. He might have something more drastic that he'll need to deal with. But they agree that the situation needs to be sorted and an assembly is called.
A meeting at...
Sunset!
and tell all the field mice.
Bring your brothers!
I do always wonder what happened to those brothers, since we never do see them at all.
Well, I was hungry and didn't have much time, so I did what I had to do.
Oh, welcome back, Huck. Wait, so you ate them?
Well, yeah, I would have preferred chaffinch, but I had to get out of there ASAP, so I got what I could and bolted.
I still don't fully buy this aim from Farthing wood thing. I mean, this was almost 30 years ago and you still look and sound as young as you are. How does that even work?
Do you really want to pull at that thread?
Fair enough. But if you were there, how come we didn't see you at the assembly?
I never heard about it. I just ran as soon as I saw the machines. I did see Toad crawling out from the dirt, and, well, when you see something like that, you just run even faster. Zombie toads are nothing you want to mess with.
Oh, yes, we should probably get back on track with this. The assembly is formed, and the remaining members of the wood, or at least the ones who heard about it, I guess, gather together in Badger's set. The mice, the voles, the shrews, the hedgehogs, the rabbits, the squirrels, the hares, the pheasants, mole, kestrel, and adder. Badger's got some serious high ceilings to accommodate everyone in there. I wasn't aware Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen worked on wild animal homes. Though to be fair, if he's forced to shill for Victorian plumbing, he probably needs any work he can get these days. And they all discuss what they should do, but of course they don't really have anything they can do until they're interrupted by good old Toad. Toad used to live in Farthing Wood until he was found and caught by a bunch of humans and kept as a pet in a depressingly really small tank, but he eventually escaped and managed to make his way back, nearly getting himself killed in the process. Though somehow he survives that, and tells the group that during his journey he came across a place that he thinks they can venture to.
I knows a place that we could go to. White Deer Park. 'Tis a nature preserve where all wild creatures are protected by humans.
I would say that you missed out with not hearing about this plan, Huck, but given what happens in the next series, you probably lucked out on not going. Of course, making such a journey is not going to be easy for a group of animals, especially considering that most of them do everything in their power to eat the other ones. So, Badger proposes something that will help get them to White Deer Park safely.
By the reintroduction of the ancient woodland vow. It was called the Oath of Mutual Protection.
Do solemnly swear
Not to swallow anybody while en route to this place of toads.
I always do wonder how they came up with this. I mean, this is clearly something that has been passed down from past generations, so was there another animal exodus all those years ago? Or did Badger just make this up on the spot? Either way, the animals reluctantly take the oath and decide that while they don't all get along, this is a situation where they really do need to work together, otherwise they're all going to be dead. And in order to keep this fur train a-moving forward, Badger designates Fox as the leader.
Are you off your trolley?
Why, Fox?
Thanks a bundle, Badger.
He's an experienced traveller. roams far and wide over all sorts of terrains.
Such a waste. I would have been a much better leader.
Oh yeah, you as the leader, what could you have... Actually, come to think of it, you're a Power Ranger, you can leap through the air while holding a cricket bat, you blagged your way into being able to go into an adult bar, you can bend the fabric of reality to turn from a cartoon fox to a puppet fox. Yeah, you probably would have been a pretty good leader, actually. So, the world's most unlikely refugees, well, at least until District 9, set off on their journey, and from here on out, the remainder of the series is that journey. Now, you might think that this might seem to be the most boring story ever imagined. I mean, what's so interesting about a bunch of animals trekking across the countryside to get from one wood to another? But as you'll find out, it's not quite all plain sailing. Even the first few steps of the journey present issues, as of course many of the smaller animals can't walk as fast as the larger animals or the ones that can fly. Especially Mole, since not only is he more used to burrowing underground, though as we'll see throughout the series, he can burrow surprisingly quickly underground, so I don't know why he just doesn't follow that way. But above ground, he can barely see, so Badger offers to give him a lift and carry him most of the way.
Hang on, Molly.
And stuff like this is the true core of what makes this story great. Watership Down doesn't really take advantage of its premise all that much. The idea of rabbits being in a situation that feels very much like something that only their species would deal with. It feels like a story that you could transplant humans into as the main characters, and not a whole lot would really be changed. But here, this story takes full advantage of the fact that not only is it being told with animals, but also really utilizes all the animals' different strengths and weaknesses into a story that's not only very interesting, but it is unbelievably intense. Of course, most of the animals aren't going to be able to do as well as the others, not just in the ability to traverse, but a lot of them have different diets, different wants and needs, different fears and threats, and that's before even taking into account their different personalities, because while some of the characters do have rather one-note personalities, they do have all very defined characteristics and identities, and of course, not all of them are going to get along, made worse by the fact of taking the species barrier into effect, and there's a constant overhanging fear of the place that they're going to may not even actually exist. This is an incredibly great premise for the story. The idea of a journey into some sort of promised land is a tale that's old as time, but this is a really good, interesting new way of looking at this story, since it provides a lot of opportunities to do things that we've not seen from this story structure before, while still keeping the true elements of what makes this story great. And this show certainly doesn't shy away from the darker parts of this kind of story. We'll get to that very soon. And it's made all the better by how some of the characters are not all that interesting, and some are just downright annoying.
If you ask me, it's time we small creatures stood up for ourselves.
I wish you'd eaten him before you left.
Nah, Vols don't agree with me.
Ironic, because no one in this show agrees with him either. The major characters are all very interesting and entertaining to watch. A lot of that does come down to their voice performances, which for the most part are really good, especially the voices by Farley, Grace and Moody. But we can get into a more detailed look at the characters later. But now, let's take a look at the first steps into their new journey. Well, they do encounter a few hiccups early on, and it's not surprising that the first major obstacle they come across is a road that they have to cross. And since when I first looked at this series, I have now learnt to drive and have driven quite a fair bit in my life, it was very easy to assume this wasn't going to end up well for them, especially considering all the stuff I see smashed at the side of the road most of the time.
Mama?
Fortunately, thanks to some good planning, the animals helping each other out, and Toad just happens to be seen by a guy who's in a truck.
What on earth have we got here?
Seriously, most guys driving a truck can't see a car that's overtaking them on the left. How the hell did he see him? Results in everybody being able to make it across the road, as Owl puts it.
Unmolested.
I don't care about the old definition of that word, that still sounds messed up. And okay, we've been putting it off for long enough, let's get into the deaths part of this show. The first deaths fall to the Newts, who decide to stay behind a small pond in the third episode since they felt they couldn't go very far, and that they had everything they needed at that place.
But the Newts have everything they need here. And they're quite safe. Nobody comes near this end of the marsh.
But soon, a fire erupts, and it's led to believe that they were killed due to the fire.
Luckily, the wind wasn't blowing our way. It was blowing the flames back, the way we'd come, to the other side of the marsh. the newts.
A bit dark, yes, but this is just the show dipping its toe into the sea of darkness that it will eventually become one with.
That's a very poetic way of saying how many characters get brutally killed in this series. By the way, is the coal counter gonna return?
No, it's not. I've already got one annoying screen hog on this show now, I don't need to bring back another one. Besides, with all those kill count videos of the series that have popped up since, I'm sure he's found a new job. But the first death that really made people sit up and notice in this series is the death of the Pheasants. In the 4th episode, the train, and yes, I still refer to them as the train, I know realistically it doesn't make any sense, but I just like the way it sounds, decide to get a respite from the rain in a barn one night. Unfortunately, first thing in the morning, Mrs. Pheasant decides to get a break from her husband. To be fair, with the way he treats her, I don't necessarily blame her.
I'll be a sitting target.
I'll do my best to look after you.
You? What good are you?
But evidently she doesn't know that farmers are also early risers and, well... You know, watching this again, I just realised he shot a bird at point blank range with a shotgun. The bird should not have looked as presentable as it did when we later see her all cooked up.
As long as you don't miss your supper.
No chance of that. I'm really looking forward to tasting that pheasant.
At least they kept the feet on. I love tearing the stringy, rubbery meat off of those bony toes.
You are one sick bastard, you know that. The others, of course, do not take this lying down and immediately escape, which leads to one of Fox's best moments when he has to outsmart a dog to give the others time to escape.
You killed his chickens.
Oh, no, I didn't. I don't even like 'em. Too many feathers. Achoo!
You got me tied in knots, you clever dick.
And admittedly on reflection, it's clear that this dog is not Rollo like I suggested the first time around. Rollo was a St. Bernard, and this one looks like a bulldog or a staffy. I think it was just the lisp that threw me off.
What am I laughing at? My master wants you dead.
To kill one fox because another hurt him, that's the same as kicking you because his wife's burnt his dinner.
He does too.
He's not kicking him because he's angry, he's kicking him to check if he's tender enough to cook yet. Farmers have to struggle just to get by, and if dinner is ruined, something has to go in the oven. Maybe Fox can find another way to distract him, like telling him the bizarre mating rituals of other animals.
The dog, however, never has to worry about impotency or sexual failure. His penis contains a bone to aid his erection.
No joke, that's Rupert Farley doing the narration for that. Now I can never hear Fox's voice the same way again. Of course, Mr. Pheasant got away, but, well, you know what they say, once bitten. Again, close-range blast with a shotgun. I wouldn't be surprised if when he eats him, this happens. But Ada does get left behind, which does lead me to bring up one of the major issues with the first series, is that there is a lot of filler. Granted, the filler does actually allow for some good character moments and even some character development, which given how many various characters there are in the series, it's good to have those moments, but it does feel a lot of the time like the plot kind of meanders along rather than going in a focused, ongoing direction. Much like the characters themselves, come to think of it. And I do get why they've done this. It's pretty much for the reason that I just said, as well as to match the fact that the characters are venturing around rather directionlessly. But it does make the show a bit of a slog to go through sometimes, and especially doesn't help since some of this filler can lead to stuff that you really didn't want to see, or in some cases, hear.
Off a pound of Tommy rice, off a pound of treacle. That's the way the mommy goes, mom goes the weasel.
I don't care what anyone says, Weasel singing is not funny. I've made an entire warning system just to prevent me from having to listen to it again.
Not that it ever worked.
Yeah, I made myself look like an idiot for nothing.
And that's different from normal how?
Quiet, Joe. But when we do get the genuinely exciting parts, it makes them feel a lot more worth it. Such as in this case when they reach the river that they have to ford. Why do they call it fording? Why not sopping or BMWing? Which then leads to one of the major plot developments that happens within the series. Fox gets separated from the rest of the train, making them believe that he's died, which also leads to the show's first example of something that it's achieved surprisingly well, cross-cutting between different stories. It was certainly an ambitious thing to do, considering the kids shows back then didn't really do this all that often. And while admittedly compared to shows that do it today, it's a little bit rough around the edges, considering the time period, I think they pulled it off pretty well. The show then follows two separate narratives at once, one being Badger then taking over the leadership of the train and trying to do as good a job as Fox was doing.
I think the mice might want to stay behind.
Well, I'm not going to let them. Look what happened to the newts. I wonder what Fox would do.
As well as Fox trying to venture through where he washed up, and slowly coming to the realization that, while he didn't particularly like being the leader, it is who he is and who he needs to be. Let's take a look at the train story first. Who wants to take a look at Fox's story, eh?
Me?
Yeah, but who cares about you?
Have you read the comments from last year?
After having done this for 15 years, I tend to avoid the comments, to ensure that I don't go insane. So Badger is made in charge and, well, he has trouble figuring out how to lead, and Toad loses his way, and Adder and Al discuss Al being leader instead, and Mrs. Mouse gives birth to some babies, and the smaller animals decide to stay behind at a copse, and Mole nearly gets eaten. Okay, let's go to Fox's story, this is boring. This is genuine drama, it's just stuff that we've all seen before from this kind of story. What Fox is getting up to is a lot more interesting. Fox ends up in a town where the canal he was washed down runs through, and after your typical chase scene, he winds up in an alley with a cat who he forms an uneasy alliance with for a little bit.
Can I help you, Mr. Cat? Remove your eye, for instance?
I'm not a cat.
And I'm not a fool either. Well, I suppose you could do my duties for me. Keep the humans happy.
Here's hoping that alleyway also contains a posh fox, a bitchy dog, and an insulting pigeon too. Unfortunately, while Fox enjoys a little vacation from his duties for a bit, he ends up getting tossed into a truck and driven out of town. And with the look on that cat's face, I'm not sure if he's just standing there because there's nothing he can do, or if he set Fox up to be a fall guy and he's thinking, serves you right for coming onto my patch, you bastard. Given that he's a cat, I'm willing to believe the latter. He then comes across a horse and has an ironic little chat with him.
Been hunting foxes all my life, and here I am now, chin-wagging with you. Don't hang a bite round here. Hunting country, miles around. Wouldn't like to think of you, you know.
That way he laughs at the end of the sentence, it just makes him seem like he's a psychopath that enjoys murder.
He's a hunting horse, that's exactly what he is.
Speaking of which, this leads to probably one of the greatest juxtapositions in all of media.
Have you got friends?
Yes. I wonder how they're getting on.
You know, you've talked about this scene so many times. What else is there left to say about it?
Only one. Why did the bird take the babies? Surely the parents would have provided a bigger meal.
Maybe because they were newborns, they were easier to impale on the branches.
Now there's a happy thought. I will say that I do understand why they went this dark. It was to emphasize how important it was that they get Fox back. Granted, it's not like he could have stopped this from happening anyway, but he probably would have put his foot, or paw, down firm and said the mice couldn't stay at the copse, and that would have helped maybe make them a little bit safer. Either way, I do like the way Badger's character develops through these two episodes, how he knows he's not the leader, but tries his best to fill the position, in both respect for what he thinks is his dead friend, and to protect the rest of the animals.
I blame myself. Fox would never forgive me. Well, it's no use quarrelling about it. We must move on out of this terrible place.
He's always been one of my favourite characters, and while this part of the series I don't find all that interesting, it is good character stuff for him. Unfortunately, during this part, we also have to put up with a lot of this as well.
The proposal is we all stay here. The Vole and Mouse Party have voted unanimously to stay here.
And it certainly doesn't help with the tedium of this part. Fortunately, it's followed by probably the best part of this series, the relationship between Fox and Vixen.
I suppose it will be my turn one day.
No, I'm here now. I'll protect you.
Thank you. But what you're already doing is so noble.
Another waste. She could have had me instead.
That's... whatever, let's move on. I do also like how they establish Fox gave the exposition off-screen between episodes. That's really useful since it gives us more time for new character moments and story, which is good because this is probably the best episode of the first series. The chemistry between Fox and Vixen is very charming and natural. Fox has found a kindred spirit towards his more instinctual side and wants her to join him on his journey because he loves her, but she's torn between settling down or wanting to remain a free spirit.
Don't you miss your freedom?
Haven't the time. Much too busy.
I see. I used to like walking alone in the morning dew.
And now?
And now I don't know what to do.
It's a great emotional conflict and develops at a great pace, made better by how Vixen is genuinely really likeable. So when we get the hunt moment, which was brilliantly set up in the previous episode, we're on tenterhooks to see if she survives because we like her, but this could still lead to a bittersweet moment, as if she survives, she might still decide that she doesn't want to join Fox after all.
Run! Run!
It's a fantastic setup that gives us excitement and emotional connection and keeps us guessing. This is, of course, intercut with the train journeying to the cops and Mole struggling to get up the hill, and it's some nice light comedy relief to break up the more dramatic moments, though I think they missed a trick here by having Vixen save Mole while being chased. As cool as Ada saving her was, and helped show that she did have different sides to her, it didn't really make a lot of sense that she would do that, since she's never even met Vixen, and she never showed any kind of heroic attitudes before this.
Maybe she was just sick of this episode focusing on the foxes, and wanted to have the reptiles get more representation.
Could be. These kind of stories do normally mammal wash their cast. So, here's a thought. Instead of having Ada save Vixen, why not have Vixen find Mole and have her stand her ground against the hunters and try to scare them off? Or have Ada or some of the other animals show up and support her? It would have shown that she's worthy to join the train and show how much of a good and kind person she is. This episode is brilliant either way. I just think it could have given us more of a reason as to why Vixen wanted to join the train. Otherwise it seems that she decided to join just because she was there. But either way, this is a great episode and definitely the highlight of Series 1.
I'm so happy. Welcome, my dear. You're one of us now.
Though the following episode is not bad either. The following episode has a much more calm and laid back feel to it, which is good after the previous episode's excitement, where the animals take a rest at a quarry. I was unaware they made a detour through Wales to get to White Deer Park. And meet Whistler, a heron with a hole in his wing that makes him, well, whistle through the air.
Someone mistook me for a pheasant. Took a pot shot. Air goes straight through it when I'm flying. Makes a whistling noise. Everyone always knows when I'm coming.
Given how vicious and heartless herons can be when hunting though, I'd imagine all the animals around would hear this and imagine the Grim Reaper of birds was coming.
See?
Imagine trying to do a horror movie like that.
Yeah, that doesn't work quite as well. As I've said before, Whistler is probably my favourite character. There's something about his very old-fashioned, refined demeanour that makes him very likeable.
He'll be asking if he can come with us next.
Not a bad idea, that.
But it's nice here.
True, but it gets a bit lonely, you know.
I also love that he decides to go to White Deer Park just for the hell of it. It really captures that whole British unflappable just go with it attitude, and I really like that. If only more people in Britain today had that attitude. From this episode on though, the plot is more standard for the format. There's not really any new developments, no new passengers to the train, a few more deaths, but aside from this one...
Whatever you do, dearest, don't curl up.
Which I don't care what anyone says, the mice death was way more disturbing. None of them really leave a big impact on you, though I do like how for the last few episodes they go through a small town. They spent most of their time going through rural areas, so it's nice to finally see them tackle a more urban setting. And they do it very well. The scene with the church is brilliant and hilarious, and the way that they all get split up afterwards was a good idea, since it adds that one last note of peril in how they're all so close to their goal, but faced with this one last hiccup. Admittedly, we didn't really need to see Weasel drunk.
I'm nice too, Badger, when you get to know me. Which you will, now that we're holed up together.
She's just tolerable enough sober. We didn't need to see her pissed.
So she's like the animal version of Melissa McCarthy?
Pretty much, yeah. But despite this, they all make it back together and finally reach their nirvana. And White Deer Jesus, aka the Great White Stag, greets them. And it's genuinely a triumphant moment, capping off their epic journey to find a new home.
Welcome to White Deer Park.
And thus brings us to the end of Series 1 of Farthing Wood, making it the third or fourth time I reviewed this series, but 9 or so years on from the first time I did it, what do I think of it now? Well, the problems that I mentioned before are still there. The story does drag a bit, the animation, while nice for the time, is very choppy and feels rather washed out in terms of its colours, but the backgrounds are beautiful, and I like how they made the design slightly more true to life than overly cartoony.
Sorry, thought you were a crack in the pavement.
Then you shouldn't have stepped on me.
For the most part. Some of the characters and comedy are a bit irritating, there's a lot of filler, and there are a lot of missed opportunities here, but overall I still think it holds up very well. As I said before, the story itself is brilliant, with a very clever reinterpretation of the typical Exodus plot device. While not all of the characters are great, the ones that are good are very enjoyable. Fox is lovable as the reluctant but strong leader.
Don't start arguing all over again. Can't you try to remember that moment when we all stood together against the human?
Badger is great as the kind, wise old man archetype who prefers to help from behind rather than in front. Owl's very enjoyable in just how snooty she is.
And he's used to scavenging. Huh. Oh, don't be like that, Owl. We can't all be leader.
Ada is awesome in just how much of a heel she can be to the group.
It's eaten half our field mouse population already.
Yes, they're so tasty.
And just does whatever she wants and doesn't give a shit.
I'll soon speed them up. Works every time.
Weasel, while she can be a bit too exaggerated, tends to be used just sparingly enough that she remains charming.
Bet you Ada won't make it.
We must wait for her, Weasel.
I won't.
Toad's very endearing with his very upbeat old salt kind of personality.
There's ducks, water birds, and I don't know what else. It's a treat of a place.
Vixen is great as one of the more complex characters who goes through a complete arc in just one episode. Whistler's gentlemanly disposition is really nice, and even some of the more minor characters can be fun. Rabbit's hypochondria is funny, Hare as the group cynic is a very nice touch, Kestrel as the reliable scout makes her enjoyable, and Mole's very pathetic nature and softness makes him very cute. Of course, not all of the characters leave such a good impression on you. The mice, shrews, squirrels, newts, and baby rabbits have almost almost no major personality traits to speak of. The Pheasants weren't all that enjoyable, but they were clearly set up as the series' red shirt, so that makes sense. And Vol, of course, is ungodly annoying in how much of an upstart he is, combined with his really annoying voice. But with a character roster this big and diverse, both in personality and species, it's only natural that some aren't going to stand out as much, or not be as enjoyable. But I think they handled the group's individuality very well for a show from this time period and the amount of ambition it had behind it. It's certainly dated, and I think in dire need of an update, but as is, it's still a great story and done very good justice here, and it's still fun to watch even now. I do wish I could have gotten more into detail, but I can't quite do what I used to all those years ago. I have a life now.
Do you really?
Well, okay, not as much of one, but I still have other things to do than this, so...
What was that?
Oh no. It's the Cull Counter, back for revenge.
Is he shooting at us or talking to us?
Who cares? Just run! Thanks for being with us and keeping this channel going for 15 years, but we're not quite done with looking back at our past just yet.
We're going to be revisiting some more of our old videos this year, so we'll be back going to White Deer Park a few more times.
We're also going to take a look at some of our more requested videos this year, so it's going to be a long anniversary celebration. So until next time, I've had enough of this, I'm going on the other side to have a bath. Bye!